Trump's lawyers say that this means his New York conviction should be dismissed. Trump echoing that argument with this post, quote, "Today's historic decision by the Supreme Court should end all of crooked Joe Biden's witch hunts against me, including the New York hoaxes."
So the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has just weighed in, and they say that they don't oppose postponing the sentencing in order to allow Trump's legal team to brief this issue following the Supreme Court's decision. So we're looking at Trump's sentencing potentially being postponed into August, but ultimately this is up for the judge, Juan Merchan, to decide.
Well, it actually turns out that Donald Trump's sentencing for his conviction in the hush money case will actually be delayed even further out than August. And we're gonna give you the details on that exact date in just a moment. But first, let's back up a little bit and talk about what's going on. Why is this happening? Well, thanks to the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity, Trump's legal team is now challenging the former president's conviction, claiming that some of the evidence that was presented in that case had to do with his official duties as president of the United States. As you may have remembered, the Supreme Court decision specifically claimed that any evidence coming from the president's official duties may not be used in prosecuting him. So that means that some of the evidence that was used is now not allowed in that case, and that's why the Trump team is challenging the conviction. So here's more on that, and then I'll fill in the blanks.
We also obtained the letter that Trump's legal team sent to the judge. We're saying that they wanted to brief this issue following the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity. And what they're highlighting are specific parts of testimony and evidence that came into the trial. Among them, they said Oval Office conversations. One piece of testimony that the jury heard was Michael Cohen saying that he met with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and that's where they discussed the reimbursement scheme. So they're arguing that that sort of evidence should not have come in and should not have come before the jury in this case.
Because if there's any official act, such as the introduction of his Twitter account, he was president, he tweeted, should that have been introduced into evidence? Should an ethics form that was signed off in 2018 while he was president be admitted into evidence? Should any other acts that he engaged in including Hope Hicks conversations, be admitted into evidence? So the critical question will be, what, if any, influence they had on the jury? There's a doctrine of law case here, it's called harmless error. And what that means is that if there's other evidence that's so overwhelming, even if there was the introduction of evidence to a trial that shouldn't have been there, the conviction would still stand.
So this is obviously now postponing the sentencing date for Donald Trump. The sentencing date has now been delayed until September 18th as Judge Merchan essentially goes through the evidence that was presented in the case to determine what was and was not covered under official presidential acts, meaning that Trump is immune from having that evidence presented in the case. I'm curious what you think about all of this, Cenk, because the alleged crime here was committed prior to Trump even taking office, no?
Yes, but nevertheless, unfortunately, I think they're right.
Thanks for watching. Our audience has helped build TYT into the media giant it is today. Together, we can accomplish anything. Support our work and join us at tyt.com/team.
First, let me back up and say, sorry, but this is another thing we were totally right about. If you remember, in the beginning of Biden's term, I was yelling about, hey, why aren't they bringing these charges? So not only on the fake elector plot, which is the most important thing, but even on Alvin Bragg. I used to call him the coward Alvin Bragg. And then when he finally brought the charges, people were like, oh, I don't know that he should have done that, blah, blah, blah. I said, look, man, this guy's co-conspirator already went to prison, Michael Cohen. It would be saying, yeah, same exact crime, but one guy's gonna go to prison and the other one is above the law, because he was the president and a powerful person and an elite. So Alvin Bragg, hurry up and bring the goddamn case, right? Well, they waited and waited and waited. Now, even on a case where they won, they waited so long. Now the Supreme Court has changed the rules about evidence, and they might have to redo the whole trial because they waited too long. We were right, why don't you just go? They let the statute of limitations run out on the campaign finance charge that was underlying federal crime to begin with. Then they go and do this. So on the actual substance of this ruling and how it affects Trump's trial, unfortunately, these legal experts are correct. So what they're saying is, Anna, it's not that the crime was affected by executive, immunity. Because he was not in office yet. He was by definition running for office and not the president. But the meetings that he had when he was president, according to this absurd ruling by the Supreme Court, you're not allowed to find out anything about the meetings.
It's insane. Yeah, it's absurd.
And so even Amy Coney Barrett, one of the conservative justices, wrote a partial dissent saying, guys, if we can't see the evidence, how do we know if it's an official act or a non-official act? How do we know if it's in his core constitutional powers or not in his core constitutional powers? You have to at least let him see the evidence. And the other 5 judges and the justices in the majority said, no, we don't want anybody to see the evidence of what President Trump or any president has done in these meetings. So what they would have to do in this case, if they are material to the case, right? If they're tangential, they could say, oh, that wasn't that important, the ruling stands, right? But if they were core to the case, they have to then do a new trial. Forget it, they're not even gonna do a new trial. They won't try to retrial. And then on top of that, even if they did do that, they then have to actively lie to the jury and hide the real evidence we all know. It's out in the public information now. But the only people who wouldn't know is the jury in that second trial because of the Supreme Court decision that you must hide evidence in order to protect the potential law breaking of presidents.
I also wanna make sure that you guys are clear on the fact that, sure, right now the sentencing has been delayed from July 11th, which is when it was initially supposed to take place, to September 18th. But I don't even know if the September 18th date will hold either, because remember what the Supreme Court also made clear in their decision. They made clear that while the lower courts, in this case, Judge Merchan, would be able to decide which acts or what evidence falls under official acts versus unofficial acts, those decisions can also be appealed. And I have no doubt that Trump's legal team will appeal it.
Yeah, and the last part of this that's devastating is that it goes to show you, it's an immediate, amazing example of how wrong the Supreme Court decision was. So now the entire legal system has to hide evidence of wrongdoing of all presidents, because basically whatever they do in office is above the law. Because again, if you can't even find out what they did, you have no idea if what they did was legal or illegal. So by definition, it protects all crimes that they committed behind closed doors.
You know, I want to skip ahead to the last video here. This is a former federal prosecutor. Her name's Christy Greenberg, and she's going to try to make the argument that this is going to be very difficult for Trump to prove, that the evidence that was utilized in this case falls under official acts that a president takes. So let's take a look at that argument, and I'm curious what you think about it, Cenk.
So he's never actually focused on the charges and made a defense of immunity as to the charged conduct. That all happened when he was a candidate, not when he's president. Even the signing of the checks that he does to reimburse Michael Cohen for making the hush money payments, hard to really see how that could, even under this test from the Supreme Court, be considered an official act. Then there's a separate question about the evidence that some of those tweets that he made in 2018 about Michael Cohen, seeming to both pressure him into cooperating and then after the fact kind of slamming him for the fact that he pled guilty. Are those official acts? The Supreme Court said any of these statements, if it's a matter of public concern, and that's what Trump's lawyers are arguing here, that's a really tortured and strained argument as far as I can tell. But the biggest thing is this was brought up earlier, and basically the court didn't get into the details of whether it was official or personal. The judge said, this is untimely. You first raised this issue 2.5 weeks before the trial was going to start.
So what do you think about that, Cenk? Because like the way that this is being talked about, it seems as though Trump using the official POTUS Twitter account as he's pressuring Michael Cohen to do something on his personal behalf. Well, it's the POTUS Twitter account, so it falls under official acts. Like, is that really, is it really that simple?
So, well, that's what we're gonna find out, because if you remember when we talked about it, I said a lot of legal scholars are shaking their head going, what the hell does this mean, right? So this case might tell us what it means, because this has to go through the courts. Merchan will make his ruling and then he'll do the sentencing, but then it'll get appealed, and it might get appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. Because guys, here's the essence of the question. Is it an official act to talk to Michael Cohen about how you're going to cook the books and cheat and hide the money that you're sending him for your mistress and covering that up? Well, of course it's not if you know what happened, because Michael Cohen's not working for the government. He's your personal fixer. It was something that you did before the election. So it has nothing to do with the White House or the presidency or the government, right? So clear as day. But as Amy Coney Barrett explained, we are not allowed to know that. So the minute he's at the White House or using a White House Twitter account, the Supreme Court can say, that's it. Once it's an official act of any sort, you're not allowed to know anything about it. So you have to strip that away and pretend you don't know that he told Michael Cohen, cheat, cook the books, do all these things. Right? And they're gonna have to clarify, and if that is what they say, and upon review, they go, yeah, you're not allowed to find out if he did anything illegal, yeah, then the president is definitely above the law. And they went a long way towards destroying democracy.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.